Welcome back everyone. In this section we are going to discuss about how do we provision the Unified Communication Manager and Unified CCX. And in this lecture we will be concentrating on how do we provision the Unified Communication Manager. So we would be discussing about how do we configure the agent phones and the IPCC extensions on the phone and what are the guidelines, and also we would be discussing about how do we configure the end user in Unified CM so that user can be provisioned or configured as a resource in Unified CCX. With that said, let me go ahead and open up the next slide. So here are the guidelines when you start deploy or when you configure the agent phones in Unified CM. So the first one is when you configure the IPCC extension on the agent phone or when you configure the Unified CCX extension on the resource phone, you can see at the end of the line or DN page, you have a section called multiple call or call waiting settings section. Under that, you would be able to see the maximum number of calls. By default, it's set to 4. But when you configure that line for the IPCC extension, make sure you set the maximum number of calls to 2. And this is for Cisco Unified IP Phone 7900 series. And when you configure Unified IP phones like the 8900 series or 9900 series, you have to set the maximum number of calls to 3. And also under the same section, you would also see the busy trigger value, and you have to set that to 1. By default, it's set to 2. That is for all models, you have to set the value to 1. And do not ever forward any unified CM device in a unified CM cluster to the unified CCX extension of the agent. That means do not call forward any number, any device in the unified CM to an IPCC extension of an agent. That means the agent should only receive the call which is being transferred by the unified CCX. No other entity in the unified CM should not transfer or forward the call. And do not configure the unified CCX extension of an agent to forward to unified CCX route point. Or do not configure the IPCC extension on the phone to forward the call that is received on the phone to the trigger or the CTI route point in Unified CM. That is not a supported config. If you do so, sometimes you would receive the call on an agent phone that would be again forwarded to the CTI route point. It would create the loop. It's not recommended config. And disable or turn off the secure RTP, because when you go for especially the monitoring or recording of the agent call, if you use SRTP, the systems would not be able to understand those packets because it's secure and encrypted. So please disable for agents. The unified CCX extension of an agent must be listed within the top 4 extension on the device profile. In case if you try to list the or configure the extension from position 5 or above, will cause the unified CCX to fail to monitor the device. So the agents will not be able to log into the Cisco agent desktop. So it is recommended that you should configure the IPCC extension within 1 to 4 buttons or lines in unified IP phones. And use of characters other than 0 to 9 is not supported. So when you configure IPCC extension for phone, make sure you enter some numerical value from 0 to 9. And do not assign the unified CCX extension to the multiple device. What does it say is do not make the IPCC extension as a shared line. For example, you may have a user that may use his desk phone some days, or he may use the extension mobility on a different phone someday. In any cases, you should not make the unified CCX extension as a shared line. And do not configure the same unified CCX extension in more than one device or the device profile, right? That's what we discussed. So don't configure or don't assign the unified CCX agent to appear on the multiple device, which will make it as a shared line. That is not a supported config. Make sure either you create or configure the IPCC extension on a hard phone or on a device profile, but not on different devices. So with that said, the above guidelines which we discussed should be followed when you deploy the unified IP phones and agent extensions in unified CM. You may have an environment where everything works all right without an issue, but at some point in the future you may start facing some issue, and if you're going for Cisco tag and say them that you're having some issue with your unified agents, they would first check to make sure you followed the guidelines when you configure your unified IP phones and IPCC extension. In case if you fail to do so, they would ask you to change that config to make sure you followed the guidelines, right? You may ask them like, it's been working for a long time, I never faced an issue, maybe it's a bug. No, they don't support it. You should have to configure those phones an extension based on the guidelines. It may work in your environment. If it's work, that's fine. If it doesn't work, you have to make sure you configure the phones based on the guidelines. With that said, let us discuss about the unified CM user. How do we configure the unified CM user? So what are the things that need to be done in the unified CM? First, we should be adding the user to the unified CM. You can add the user manually to the unified CM, or you can synchronize your local unified CM end user database with an LDAP, such as Microsoft Active Directory, right? So when you do that, the user that is being created in the Microsoft Active Directory would be synced with the unified CM so that you can see those users as an end user in unified CM. Or if this is not your corporate employee or staff, if you want to create a user for an external user and they don't have an AD account, you can still configure it manually in unified CM. From Unified CM version 9, it supports both config. You can synchronize with the LDAP, also you can manually create the end user. And once you create the users, make sure to associate the agent phone to the end user. To the control device section, you have to associate a device to the end user, so that in the next step, the third step, we should be able to specify the IPCC extension to the user. What is the purpose of specifying the IPCC extension? If we don't assign IPCC extension to the end user, you cannot configure that end user as an agent or resource in a unified CCX. So first thing, you have to make sure you create the user, you associate the device that is configured for them. It may be the desk phone or it may be the device profile for the extension mobility login purpose. You have to associate either one of that which has the IPCC extension, right? So associate that device to the end user, and once you do that, you should be able to see the directories that are configured in the IP phone under the end user page. Once you associate the device to the end user, just go to the bottom of the page where you have the IPCC extension selection option. Click the drop down and select the IPCC extension and save the settings. So next one is the associate the device to the unified RMCM provider user. I hope you still remember that when we're doing the initialization of unified CCX, we have created an application user called RMCM. So what we have to do is, when you do associate the device or device profile to the end user in the step 2, you have to follow the same rule here. You have to associate the same device. It may be a device or it may be a device profile. You have to associate the same endpoint to the RMCM provider user. In our case, it is the application user called RMCM. So make sure to do that so that the unified CCX would be able to monitor the phone with the help of the resource manager, control manager subsystem. So it is important to follow that step. With that said, let us navigate over to the unified CM administration page, and I'll show you. I have already configured few phones for us. Like I have configured 3 agent phones, and I also added the end user to the unified CM. we will take a look at how did we configure those phones and how did we associate the devices to the end user. Let us navigate over to the Unified CM web page now. Okay, here I am in the Unified CM administration web page. Let me go over to the device, phone, and here you can see I have configured 3 IP communicators or 3 soft phones for those agents. Let me open up the IPC 2001. And here you can see this is going to be the primary line for the agent, which is 2001, and this is going to be the IPCC extension for an agent. So I configured the extension 3001. Let me go over to that, and you can see here the maximum number of calls. By default it's set to 4. I have changed that to 2 based on the guidelines, and also set the busy trigger to 1. This is really important. You have to do it. You have to just follow those guidelines I mentioned. You have to do this configuration, and I already made sure this IPCC extension is not shared with any other hard phone, or even it is not configured in the same device with a different partition. And I made sure that I followed those guidelines, and I configured all the 3 agents in the same way. I followed those guidelines. I configured all the 3 phones with the same config, and they should be having 3 extensions. One is 3001, 3002, and 3003 as IPCC extension. So let me navigate over to the end user page, and I have created 3 user IDs or end users for agents. Let me navigate to the agent 1. Have created the agent and provided the credentials and PIN number for them. The PIN is needed in case they want to log in to the phone using the IPPA service, IP phone agent service. So here you can see that I haven't associated the device to the control device under the end user section. So let me go ahead and do that right now. So click the device association. So the device is IPC 2001. Check the checkbox here, which is in front of the IPC 2001, and click Save Selected. And then go back to the end user page. You would see the device that is configured for the agent is associated now. Once you do this, you can come down and you have the option to select the primary and the IPCC extension. For agent 1, the primary extension is going to be 2001 and the IPCC extension is going to be 3001. Right? So far, let me quickly navigate over to the Unified CCX. So let me go to the user view. We should be able to find all the agents which are listed here. So let me go to the agent 1, and you can see that the available capabilities, under the available capabilities, you cannot see the capability called agent. It is because of the reason the agent doesn't have any agent extension or IPCC extension assigned to the end user page. So let me go ahead and do that now. So I have provided the IPCC and primary extension here. The primary extension is not mandatory, but still I provide that. And let me save the setting here. Once you do it, let me go back to the user list and open the agent 1 again. Now you could see that the agent 1 has the primary extension as well as the IPCC extension. Once I'm done that, you can see that it's already provided the capability of agent to the user called agent 1. It's because of the reason the agent is configured with the agent extension or IPCC extension. So I have to follow the same guidelines for each and every user each and every end user that they are going to be a resource or agent in unified CCX. I believe I have already done for all the three agents. I haven't done for agent 3. I will be doing that. It's going to be the same procedure. And let me go over to the application user, which is the final step which we discussed in the slides. We would find an application user called RMCM, which is the RMCM provider user ID. So we have to associate these three devices, which are going to be the agent phones, so that the RMCM subsystem can monitor those phones. Okay, I have to associate those devices to the control device setting, and you can see these are already configured. When we do the initialization of these groups are assigned, when we do the initialization of unified CCX, I just have to save the setting. So that's all about provisioning the unified CM for unified CCX. In the next lecture, we would be discussing about how do we provision the unified CCX. Thanks for watching.